Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week I'll be talking about and introducing to you the slice of life genre. And as this is a fairly broad and more or less vague kind of genre, I've chosen one of the anime that I really like, even more after rewatching it. And I think it represents a lot of the slice of life genre. Amaama to Inazuma, or Sweetness and Lightning in English. So before I even start, let's start with the disclaimers. I will spoil everything from the series, but the series doesn't actually have any drama at all, or any, let's say, there's no actual conflict that goes on for more than one episode. So for the sake of this review, spoiler alerts, though the spoilers don't actually count to anything. And the second disclaimer is, as I already said, the genre is really broad, and I will get at the end to explain a bit of the genre and how this anime kind of fits in. But simple to say, this is just one example of a huge library of everything that you can find in this, and there is a huge, let's say, gradient of, let's say, emotions and themes that you can find on this genre. So I would advise you to research for yourself. For the most part, I will maybe present some other examples of anime that you can watch for this, but for the sake of this review, I think this one encapsulates a lot of the genre itself and the premise of the introduction, let's say. So before I even start with the story, the plot, let's start with the stats. So Sweetness and Lightning was originally a manga written by Mangakure Gido. It originally ran from February 2013 to August 2018 with 12 volumes. I don't actually know the chapters, I didn't read the manga. And then the anime came out in July 2016 and ended in September 2016. The studio is TMS, and the musical score was done by Nobuko Toda. Now, talking about the plot, Sweetness and Lightning is a pretty, let's say, simple story, but the way they present it is really touching. So before I even start, right, so this is a really wholesome, really cute anime. The whole premise is the following. So we follow the story of Inuzuka Kohei and his daughter Inuzuka Tsugumi, who's basically a toddler, right? I don't actually think they actually mention it in the anime, but I think she's like 3-4 years old at max. And basically the start of the story is, at some point, we get to meet Kohei and Tsugumi, but it's been like 6 months since Kohei's wife has passed away, and he's dealing with the struggles of being a single dad. With that being, and I saying it like that is kind of hard, but the struggle being, right, balancing not only personal life to work, as we all do as adults, but also caring for his daughter like he thinks he should, because the drama here, right, the whole thing that basically comes out is that Kohei notices that with the lack of his wife present, Tsugumi doesn't have actually a maternal figure anymore, and so he has this craving for fulfilling this position, because he at the start of the story has not yet overcome the fact that his wife is gone. And at the start of the story, right, Tsugumi doesn't actually understand that, and this is a thing that the anime does, I think, in a really subtle but really well done way, is that we actually get to see some development from the start to the end of the anime. But I'll get to that eventually. The thing is, right, so Kohei is just struggling here with not only the fact that he is really busy as a teacher, and Tsugumi has her own schedules and everything because she has to go to kindergarten, and Kohei doesn't actually have the time to go pick her up, and so he depends on a babysitter, and sometimes his friends and whatever. And one of the main plots, the main thing really about this anime is that Kohei is struggling with the fact that he worries a lot about the fact that Tsugumi is not really eating correctly, right? So the thing is, they start off showing that they basically leave off bentos from the convenience store and prepackaged stuff and a whole lot of pre-made food, right? And so as a way to not only get closer to his daughter, but actually to see her, let's say, get some enjoyment out of it. And not only that, but also in the first episode they also say that in the fact that he, let's say, he's kind of struggling without his wife, he cannot even eat with his daughter that is really small at this point. So there is that parental worrying about missing out on his daughter growing up in a way. I'm making a really bad job at explaining this, but the first episode really shows the premise really well. I can't really explain it in an audio way without showing you, but the matter of the fact is, Kohei notices at some point that Tsugumi is not eating well, on the fact that she doesn't actually like the bentos and the pre-made stuff he buys, and so he comes up with this thing of wanting to cook for his daughter so she can actually get some enjoyment out of it. Eventually we get to see that back when his wife was still alive, they actually had a good, let's say, relationship between everybody at the house, like eating together and doing things together and whatever. And the basic premise at the beginning is that Kohei is searching for a way to live better with his daughter. At some point in the first episode, right, when Kohei and Tsugumi go out for, I don't actually know the word in English, I think it's blossom seeing or something like that. It's when the sakuras really blossom and people have picnics and whatever at the parks. It's somewhat of a known thing, I don't actually need to explain, but anyways. And Tsugumi as a toddler, she basically is active and go talk to anyone and has that whole toddler thing. And this is one thing that the anime really does a really, really good job, in my opinion. The fact that it is really well incorporated that Tsugumi is a toddler. I would say a normal one, the one that doesn't actually know the word yet, right? Say they are really innocent, they really try to make friends out of anyone, and the whole toddler thing. And Kohei, as a counterpart, he's a really, let's say, newbie single dad, and so he really worries about her. Eventually, in one of the later episodes, oh my god, it's so hard to watch. But the thing is, eventually he shows how much he worries about her, and still he doesn't actually know what to do sometimes. And this comes up often enough to be one of the main points, but eventually they kind of grow out of it. Kohei eventually becomes better at being a dad, let's say, being a father, but the struggle is the main point here. So Tsugumi, in this thing of talking to strangers and whatever, eventually she crosses one girl, and the girl, basically, it's a whole, let's say, strange interaction of things considered, and the girl ends up giving a business card for her family's restaurant, so Kohei can go and have like homemade kind of food at the restaurant. And from this point on, we get to, let's say, the main plot of the whole anime. So the girl eventually comes out to be one of Kohei's student called Kotori Ida, and from this point on, each and every episode, basically, they come to arrangement in which Kohei and Tsugumi will go to Kotori's, let's say, house / restaurant and prepare food. So basically, Kotori's mother is a chef and TV personality, sort of, and she's the chef nonetheless, and leaves recipes for them to follow, and they basically go to her house to cook and learn how to cook, so Kohei can actually learn how to cook to Tsugumi, and Tsugumi gets to, at first, get decent food, let's say, and eventually comes to gather more friends, right? So more friends outside of the kindergarten, and interact more or less with other people. And basically the premise of every episode, as I already said, there is some kind of, I'm not saying drama, but some kind of conflict, let's say, something that happens, some kind of dish will come up, some kind of, one of them, the first episode in specific, it's really simple, it's just rice. That the episode always ends with them tasting the food and saying it's delicious, but it is so cute in the betweens of the whole thing that, oh my god, it's so good. The thing is, to me, Tsugumi is just such a cute kid. Oh my god, she's so cute. Anyways, getting off track. So one of the episodes, if I remember correctly, Tsugumi has a sleepover at school, and they make curry, but eventually she says that the curry they are having at school is like the pre-made one, the restaurant one, the one that is really, let's say, normal without personality. More or less, I'm getting a whole lot more words than she does, but the idea is that the curry is normal, let's say, air quotes here. And then talking to Kohei, she remarks that the one that her mother made when she was little, it had raisins and other stuff. And so one of the premises is that eventually Kohei finds an old recipe notebook and goes to Kotori, and they made the one that really was, let's say, Tsugumi's mother recipe, Kohei's wife, and it's really well represented. The when you have something that has a nostalgic taste to you, and I think that shows really. It's so wholesome. God damn it! The thing is, right? Every one of the episodes, it has 12 episodes. Every one of those shows up a new recipe, a new sensation, not new sensation, but new situation of where they get the inspiration for the dish, what does this relate to Kohei and Tsugumi in a way, and eventually they get more people involved and so on and so forth. That's basically the whole story right now. But the thing is, right, and I have to give two warnings. There are two episodes in specific that I find especially hard to watch, and it is the one, and I will say it like that because the first time I watched it, I came out with a really strong impression on these two episodes that really made me kind of not like this anime at all. But after rewatching it, really analyzing it as objective perspective, I came to like the anime really more because the premise really is the one guiding rod of this whole thing. And so the thing is, right, the first episode I want to talk about is the one when Kohei is sick, and Tsugumi has this brilliant idea of, let me remind you, a toddler. She goes out alone to find Kotori and ask for help, and she is trying not to cry because she's a toddler, right? So she will cry from a lot of stuff and being alone and whatever. So she's trying her best to not to cry and until she reaches Kotori, and when she finds Kotori, they kind of talk a bit, whatever. Kotori finds medicine and stuff to send for Kohei, and when Kohei finds them in the middle of the street, they start to argue. I mean, Kohei is, at this point, you get it, that the only thing that he worries about, the only thing that moves his world, his whole existence at that point is Tsugumi, and to the situation from his point of view, right? So he goes there, he's sick, he goes to sleep for a few hours, and when he wakes up, his door is gone. The door is open. I mean, I could not blame him, right? No one would blame him for being worried to death for his daughter. And that's the thing, it's really hard to watch it because, I mean, if you get into it, the scene is really strong in many ways. The whole thing is, let's say, really, really emotional, and at the same time, you really want them to make up because those are all good intentions. You know what I mean? They're all good intentions meant in between the Tsugumi going out and Kohei worrying about her. But then the thing is, it's really emotional, really hard to watch. I cannot explain it better than this. But this is the first episode, and the second episode is, ironically enough, the last one. The last episode in specific has one of the scenes that I don't actually like because it kind of builds up with the same, let's say, premise of Tsugumi doing something wrong and getting scolded, and Kohei actually not being, let's say, being still somewhat of a newbie single father. The second episode kind of ends up doing the same thing, but not in the same way. So basically, Tsugumi misbehaves at the restaurant and starts crying. Being an anime, right? The Japanese thing is that you should not make loud sounds in public anywhere, and so a kid crying at the middle of a restaurant is kind of a no. So you can kind of guess what happens, and eventually Tsugumi does some not worse things, but some bad things yet after that, and the whole thing kind of goes around and around, but they make up at the end, and it's pretty cute, it's pretty wholesome. And I mean, that's it for the whole plot, really. For the most part, the anime is pretty wholesome. These two episodes in specific are the ones that I warned that they're kind of difficult to watch if you get into it. And from this point on, the only thing I have to do is say, why does this fit into the genre, right? So, slice of life genre, and this is the thing, right? Slice of life is, as the title says, slice of life. So it can be anything, and it will take many forms. Let's say the thing about slice of life is that sometimes it will not be necessarily. Generally, it doesn't have action, right? So it doesn't actually have many powers, many fantasy things. Although there are some examples of, let's say, fantasy coming into slice of life. So, for instance, Kobayashi-san no Maid Dragon is one of the slice of life / comedy kind of animes and manga that is really good. It's really wholesome in the same, let's say, in the same vein as Sweetness and Lighting, that has has fantasy creatures, dragons, right? But it doesn't actually deter from the slice of life kind of presentation, because the slice of life that it shows is just that, a slice of life, the everyday life of someone who has a dragon for a mate, let's say. And as with Sweetness and Lighting, it's just the everyday life, the struggle of everyday life of a single dad with basically a baby daughter, trying to build his, not only his relationship with his daughter, but also his, not responsibility, but his role as a father, as a parental figure, now alone without his wife, and caring and upbringing, raising his daughter. And that's more or less it for the genre itself. And as I said, this can take a whole lot of forms and ways it can actually be presented. Some of the slice of life anime will be more, let's say, dramatic, maybe more sentimental in other ways. Maybe they're not really sentimental, they just show, I don't know, something different from our normal life. Sometimes I don't actually remember all the names of it, but for example, one of the, and it doesn't actually have an anime yet, but I think the anime is coming out in 2023. I don't actually know the date, but the manga for Bartender by Araki Jo is a slice of life of some bartender, basically, and it has a much more, let's say, contemplative outlook on the, not only on the plot but also in the story, the way that the story is presented, because in that story the main character doesn't actually do much of anything. He just he says, comforts people as they want to be comforted when they come to a bar. So anyone who comes to a bar is taken care of in many ways, and that's one way of presenting it. And there are, as I already said, there are a whole lot of different slice of life things that you can find out there, and this is one of the examples, and the one example I chose to present here today. So just some final opinions to round out the review. First off, the animation is not so good, but it doesn't actually need to be. It's kind of rough sometimes, but it's really passable. The music is pretty good, the opening is pretty nice, the ending kind of, but not really. I don't vibe with it, but that's just me. And I think that's more or less it. So if you like what I do, if you like my work, if you like the podcast, please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in. And I hope you stick around. Bye.